Some common foods can make you look older faster. But what if I told you that cutting or reducing some of these foods in your diet can help you fight back against wrinkles and dullness and sagging from the inside out? In this video, we're revealing the 5 everyday foods that age you, plus what you can eat instead to promote enviable, youthful looking skin. Kicking off with our first food, which probably won't surprise you, and that is excess sugar. Now, this is categorically not a slice of grandma's homemade pie or granny's homemade cake. There is definitely a place for that. What it does mean is things like sweets and candies and cookies, and probably the worst culprit of all, soda or fizzy drinks, which up to a quarter of us drink every day. The readily available sugars in these foods lead to a process called glycation. Now, that sounds like a fancy word, but ultimately what it means is sugar molecules sticking to your collagen fibers, making those collagen fibers stiff and making your skin more prone to wrinkling. In fact, one study showed that the more sugar people ate, the older they looked. So what can you eat instead? Now, as a person with a naturally sweet tooth, I can tell you there are lots of options. Instead of sweets or candies, why not reach for some colourful antioxidant-rich berries instead? You will be amazed at how naturally sweet these can be, and actually one of my favourite things to eat in the summer is frozen cherries direct from the freezer. Or if you fancy some chocolate, how about going for dark chocolate with 70% cocoa solids or above? Dark chocolate can actually have a gentle anti-aging or anti-wrinkle effect. Or if you're desperate for a soda or a fizzy drink, could you try some sparkling water with chopped fresh fruit in it instead? The helpful thing here is that your palate does change, and more quickly than you might expect. You'll get to the point where the foods that you once craved now taste unbearably sweet. Moving on to our second food, which is related, and that is refined carbohydrates. Now, these are typically anything that is sweet, white or fluffy. So we're talking white bread, white rice, white pasta, most cereals, crackers. You get the picture. Now, these foods are stripped of much of their fiber and nutrients, which means they're broken down into sugar really quickly by your body. Now, this can lead to an inflammatory environment which shows up on your skin. And again, one recent study showed that when people ate a refined carbohydrate meal, their facial attractiveness immediately decreased. And that's kind of mind-blowing. Now, again, enjoying sweet, white and fluffy croissants for brunch with your friends is one thing, but mindlessly eating that same old refined cereal every day is another thing, and that's what we're looking to tweak here. So what can you eat instead? Now, there are 2 rules of thumb here. The first one is just to choose a fruit or a vegetable instead. Now, not everyone realizes that these are also a source of carbohydrate, and because they contain lots of fiber, they're naturally very satiating. So instead of having white rice with your dinner, for example, could you serve a side of hearty roasted vegetables instead, say some carrots and sweet potato? The second rule of thumb is to choose the dark, dense or chewy version of the food instead. So instead of white bread, you might have a delicious chewy sourdough. Or in this house, we eat a fair amount of pasta because my husband loves it. But instead of white pasta, we have brown rice pasta, which is much darker in colour, much chewier, and also contains much more fibre. Make these choices enough, and I guarantee you will be rewarded with better skin. Now, before we move on to our third food, let me just say that if you are interested in this concept of leveraging food as skincare, you want to download my free guide, Skincare Starts on Your Plate, the Jumpstart Guide. You can find it at my website, fionalawsonnutrition.com, and I will also pop the link in the video description box below for you. The third food on our list is fried foods and trans fats, and we have 3 main culprits here. The first are those store-bought baked goods which are designed to sit on the shelf for weeks. Things like pastries and muffins and pies. The second culprit are deep fried foods, so your fried chicken, your fries, and also things like donuts. And the third culprit, which not many people think about, is coffee creamer. The problem is that these foods contain fats which are kind of misshapen or distorted, so your body doesn't really know how to manage them. You can think of these fats like a gang of rebels. They go in, cause chaos, and leave damage and destruction in their wake, and that's what's known as oxidative stress. And too much oxidative stress leads to, you guessed it, faster aging. And when you think about it like that, is that coffee creamer really worth looking older? The first solution here is to cut down on fried foods in your diet. So if you're eating out, that could mean going for the grilled chicken rather than the fried chicken, or it could mean choosing mashed potatoes rather than fries. The second solution is cutting down or avoiding commercially produced baked goods. Remember, the ones that sit in the packet for weeks. Instead, support a local bakery that makes these things fresh, or even better, find a muffin recipe that you love and make them at home as a treat. And the third solution is avoiding coffee creamer where you can. Instead, have a teaspoon of real heavy cream in your coffee, or you can even learn to enjoy your coffee black. Moving on to our fourth food, which is really a drink, and that is alcohol. Now, before you think me an absolute killjoy, I want you to know that I do enjoy a glass of wine, but I do it knowing the downsides. The fact of the matter is, your skin, my skin, just doesn't love alcohol. It causes inflammation and oxidative stress, which, as you now know, drive aging. And a study from 2019 showed that when women drank more than 8 alcoholic beverages a week, they had more noticeable facial lines, they had puffier eyes, and they had more visible blood vessels. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? And another study showed that just one night of drinking too much led to a month and a half's acceleration in biological aging. So excessive drinking is definitely a no-no if you want to stay looking young. We actually have less data on low to moderate alcohol consumption and its effect on skin, but it's probably best to err on the side of caution. Where possible, just have a small glass of wine with dinner, or have one beer and stop there. And if you're in a situation where you will be having more than one drink, which, let's be honest, happens quite a lot in Western culture, at the very least have a glass of water in between each alcoholic beverage. That will naturally slow you down, and it will also help to rehydrate you in between the alcohol. Finishing up with our last food, which is excess salt. Now, believe it or not, this has less to do with adding salt to your meals and more to do with choosing dishes or foods that already have high sodium in them. This can lead to that pesky inflammation and puffy, dull-looking skin. The key culprits here are processed, ready-made foods. Now, did you know that just one frozen pizza can contain up to 10 grams of salt? And if you look at 10 grams of salt in my hand, there is just no way that you would add that to your food. Even canned soups, which seem healthier, can be a real salt hit. One can of soup can have more than 2 grams of salt, which again, you just wouldn't add to your food. Now, a word of caution here, because lots of ingredients labels just list sodium, but that's only one part of sodium chloride or table salt. To get the true salt figure, you need to multiply the sodium figure by 2.5. The bottom line is that if you want to stay looking younger with smooth, unpuffy skin, you need to eat less processed food, and particularly less ultra-processed food. And again, science backs this up, with one study showing that the more salty, ultra-processed food people eat, the faster they age. So the solution here is, as much as you can, eat food that you prepare yourself. Make a soup, make some pizza, have fun with the toppings. And if you feel you need to add salt to taste, you'll be adding way less than you would find in the processed version, and you'll wake up way less puffy the next day. So there we have it, the foods that age you and what to eat instead. And when you see them side by side, it's kind of obvious. These foods are going to give you dull, lackluster, wrinkled skin, while these foods are going to give you youthful, glowing, healthy looking skin. But this is real life. Sometimes you are going to eat these foods, and that's fine. The point here isn't about perfection, it's consistency. Focus on eating these foods as much as you can, and I promise you'll see it when you look in the mirror. If you enjoyed this video, you'll like what I've done on the anti-aging diet, which I'll pop there for you. Thank you for watching until the very end.